Sounds good.
All right, so it's recording. And then I guess my first question is like, so right after spring break, I guess how did the school break the news to like all the teachers? Like email, like is it group session? Like how did that go?
Well, before we left for spring break, we knew that there was, I mean, we kind of knew just looking at the news and just having conversations, like there was hints like we might not come back.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we knew that there was that possibility and it was not guaranteed, but just, nothing officially was communicated, but just among teachers, we were like, that might happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then I believe it was email
Mm.
that it was communicated that we're not coming to school, and then we had at least once a week meetings with the staff, with Mr. Moran, saying okay, we had the standing meeting, we're going to meet every week and just have an update on what's going on. And there were a lot of emails because things were changing throughout, every day there was more news.
Mm-hmm.
So
did you guys have
so
online meetings? Like online meetings?
Yeah.
Okay.
We had online
With
meetings.
all of the staff, like the whole staff of the school? Oh.
Yeah. Well, all the teachers. I think it was like I think the staff, like the office people, the administrators, all had like administrative meetings, like Office 103 and front office and the deans and all that. I think they all had like staff meetings, and then like we would have teacher meetings. Like we normally have weekly teacher meetings where it's just like Miss Trower, Mr. Moran, and then all the teachers together. Because some issues overlap between the two groups, but a lot of times the issues are separate, so we don't want to waste anybody's time by having one gigantic meeting.
Did you think like the meetings went well? Like was everything really smooth, or was it like a bunch of, or was it just arguing, or was it just like listening to what they had to say?
Mr. Moran usually took the lead on the meetings, and then there was like chat going on. So, some things somebody would ask a question, like there were side conversations going on. Like normally there might be where somebody's like, hey, I have student support. Can someone take notes for me? And then they might need to duck out of the meeting, or someone might make a comment on something Mr. Moran said, and somebody else might address it, so that addresses that comment, or somebody might make a comment and then somebody else says, yeah, we should ask Mr. Moran about that.
Do you think like
so and then he would see the chat, he would kind of, does that make sense?
Yeah. But do you think like being online and sharing your opinions, he took it like very seriously, or was it like less serious because it was just online and just like a text?
No, I think it was pretty serious. Like he did it through Teams, where he had, it was like a video, like, kind of like a Zoom meeting. And yeah, the teachers took it very seriously and they behaved very professionally. Everyone was concerned about what was happening and what are we supposed to do, really listening for direction from him. And
so it's like the Microsoft Teams video?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like, how, I don't know if you attended the Microsoft Teams training video with Mr. Moran. He did like one for, he did one for like the high school group, and one for like the lower school group. Yeah. And he kind of broke it down by age to kind of train the students, because he wanted to, be involved in that. Mm-hmm. and let students feel like they were connected to him, and that they had a voice in what was happening, and they heard directly from him, instead of, because so many times, like, parents, where the administrators, the teachers communicate directly to the parents, which, it's a nice tool that we've been using here this couple of years, but at the same time, it really takes away from, originally it was like, well, the teachers communicate to the students, and the students' responsibility is to communicate to the parents. Mm-hmm. But this way there's a direct line, so it's kind of like a triangle there. So, but sometimes in that communication with Parent Square, sometimes the kids are kind of left out and not really knowing what's going on, especially if some of the parents aren't really getting those parent square messages.
Mm-hmm.
So, just trying to open up as many lines of communication as possible. I think that they really tried to tune into that. And like when we started having online classes, we were supposed to let someone know, either Ms. Moran or someone in 103, let them know that, we haven't heard from the student, and has anybody heard from them?
Okay.
Just to make sure everybody was okay, and make sure that nobody was left out, and just everyone had some way of being in touch with someone. So just keeping that community.
About the online classes, was it mandatory for you to hold them, or was it just like you choose if you want to hold them or not?
It changed over time, because at first we thought, we're just going to be out of school for like a week. We thought it was going to be temporary. So it was like, well, we need to make sure that we're holding class, and it's, the students can come optionally, left up to the teachers. As far as high school goes, it was really like, well, here's a spreadsheet, and we want you guys to sign in, or sign up for different times. And most teachers did not sign up for class every single day, because there was a strong message from Mr. Moran saying, we don't want to overload the kids with all of this, and just do try to do the best you can. When we thought it was going to be temporary, there wasn't a lot of guidance on that. Like they're like, well, first week, kind of like, let's try to get in touch with your kids. We're going to put this Microsoft Teams in place. We know you haven't been trained on it, but just like watch these videos and do the best you can. And some teachers were already using Google Classroom, so he's like, go ahead and keep on using that. Use whatever works best for you and your students, whatever you're used to. And then as we realized it was going to go on for longer, then it started getting more of a rhythm. I know for lower school, it was they made a schedule, like saying who was going to be meeting at what time, and that we needed to offer a class at least twice a day on our designated day for like 6th grade. So, just to offer as many opportunities as possible for the students to get the instruction that they needed, and to put the assignments on Teams so that they could see and access what those assignments were, and just like not require attendance to the class, because we don't know what's going on in their homes. And just being really, really responsive to the students and their needs, while at the same time saying, we need to, we want to make sure that they get the instruction that they need for this year.
I guess Mr. Moran was, ambiguous in what you should do, but the one point stressed is that you just need to like maintain contact with the students, whether it be, just posting an assignment, or like putting up like an optional video, or like a mandatory class session online, right?
Yeah, in the beginning it was less, it was really,
less reinforced.
And I think even in the beginning we had to put like lesson plans for the week, something like that, and we had to send it through Parent Square. Something where, and then it was like optional, if you want to hold an online class or something like that, you could do that, but it wasn't really required. But more like, hey, can you give the students maybe an assignment that they can work out and be working on throughout the week, so that they're not scheduled too much, and they can work on it when they can. So that was like, that was the beginning.
It got stricter with what you guys had to do.
Yeah, it got stricter as time went on, just to, because the I think the feedback from the parents, and he was, really responsive. I felt like listening to what the parents were saying, like how things were going. But, the students a lot of times needed, especially the younger students, needed that contact they were missing, because they don't, a lot of them might not be as much, have such a digital life with their friends when they're younger. So the students really responded well to having online classes.
Now, I guess my second question would be, what do you normally do, like, for your teaching when you're in the classroom? And then what did you do to change your teaching style to reflect the changing times?
Okay, so normally I like to give a lot of visual examples and like grab things off the shelf and just give an example of, hey, here's a pendulum, or let me show you an example of a wave. Like everybody, like, let's do a wave through the classroom, or let's get a bunch of people standing up in the center aisle and let's show a longitudinal wave where, people are bumping into each other and showing that compression moving through the line. So a lot of impromptu examples responding to the students' questions. And so that's what I like to do a lot when I'm teaching class in person. So what, all of a sudden when we're online, everything is like, either talking or just like read through this text and answer these questions. And a lot of kids don't learn well like that. So I decided to make some videos. I have like a YouTube channel, and I made some videos to show some of the examples of the things that I was talking about. And so I made several videos, things like how light mixes and how light absorbs energy depending on the color, and how much that's happening, or examples of some concepts with motion when I was reviewing. So I'm trying to think of, I think I brought home some materials with to show circuits. So I made like this, put it on a big board and just had, filmed making the connections with the light bulb and the switch and the power source, and showing like, well, which one of these components is necessary and which one of these components is optional, and just showing that and talking through it. So in that respect, sometimes it was even easier to show with the video. So I'm gonna, with the close-up things. So in class, I might do like a lab where everybody has a set of the equipment, and sometimes, kids can get off task or not, forget what we're doing. So they might not get the full effect of what we're doing and what the message is, what they're supposed to get out of the lab. But making the videos, I can show them and walk them through that. So, and then they can watch the video again and again, and if they want to. And that way, if they didn't hear it clearly, or, they could rewatch those videos. So I thought that was, and the kids really liked it. Like I put bloopers at the end and tried to make them entertaining, because that's my style with the younger kids. I try to be silly with them, because if they're having a good time, then they're learning. If they're bored, they're, it's going to go like in one ear and out the other. And if they're not sitting in class, they can maybe have the video on and just like be walking around the room, or playing a game, or doing something. Like nobody's going to see if they're paying attention or not. So, so if making the videos engaging as possible is what I tried to do, and they loved it. Like they were like, "When are you going to post the next video, Miss Heinzer?"
Okay.
So that was good. For high school, it's a different style. Kids are generally more serious. There was not a lot of attendance.
Is it possible if you could like base them mostly on like your high school classes? If that's cool.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't think I did any videos for the high school classes, because I honestly didn't feel like they would actually watch them. So with the high school, I was more trying to do more, or as I learned along the way, and it was a total, definitely a learning curve for me because I, hadn't done this before, but I realized that, how important those relationships are, and making contact and really checking in with students, because if someone is struggling in a subject, they're not really likely to like send you an email saying, hey, Ms. Heinzer, can you explain this concept a little more? Or can we meet, can we have a Zoom meeting and do some student support? Most students now, there are a few that actually ask for that, but there are a lot of students that are hesitant to do that. It's just too much effort, and they don't want to feel like I don't know, like they don't want to be ashamed of any incompetence. They want to feel like, they can do it all. And maybe if they just work a little bit harder, then they can do it, and maybe feeling frustrated and alone. So trying to make more contact, on the one hand, trying to free up their time, trying not to overschedule those students that was like my main concern in the beginning, that I didn't want to overschedule. So I thought, well, if I just like give assignments and let kids do it on their own, then that'll okay. Then I realized that wasn't the best for everyone, and that students needed a little bit more contact, a little bit more guidance. So I kind of changed my approach as time went on. And if I had to do it over again, I would have done things a little bit differently. I feel like there were some students that got left behind a little bit. And so just, making a better effort, a stronger effort to communicate and really check in with students, even if it's just like, hey, you know what, I want to set up an appointment for every student, just maybe one-on-one, just to really check in and say, how are you doing? What are some of your concerns, or what's going on with you? I think that might, or even in small groups, if people wanted to do it like that, but really making an effort so students feel more at ease to be in touch, and let something, let it be known what's going on, or if they're feeling like super stressed out about something, or whether it's my class or another class, maybe I can help to talk them through it, talk about strategies. Sometimes when you're stressed out about something, you can't really think clearly, and it just helps to talk to someone. So I think, as teachers, it's part of our responsibility is not just making sure that the students, intellectual health is good and that they're learning things, but also their mental health and their emotional needs are being met. So, some students are comfortable talking with some teachers and not with others. So you don't know who a student would feel comfortable talking to. Maybe they feel like, well, if I go to one of the people in office 103, first of all, they don't know me. And second of all, then, they're probably overwhelmed with other students, or, you don't know what they're thinking, but, they've already established a relationship with their teachers in the classroom, or, so then there might be more willing to talk with those.
All right. And during your time online, do you think you had to work more, less, or is it like the same amount of work, in your opinion?
I think it was more. Honestly, it felt like it was, it felt like it was more, but other things were more important than other, the things that were important changed. So, I don't know, when I'm teaching class, a lot of times I don't know, I feel like I can improvise a little bit more, where if I'm online, every second counts. So I really need to polish up what my presentation and really, where if I'm in class, I can point to something on a piece of paper and say, hey, did you think about this? I can make those individual interactions with students more easily in class, just by walking around the room and spot checking and seeing what's going on, and seeing a student's face and seeing like, do they look worried, or do they look like they're super bored, or do they, whatever it is, I can see that. But online, I feel like I was just feeling like, I don't know what they're thinking. Maybe I'm missing something. Why isn't the student coming to the classes? Why, or this student like always didn't really engage in class as much, but now all of a sudden online they're engaging a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So just there's a total shift in personality.
Yeah.
On the way kids interact online versus in person.
Okay.
So,
also with Zoom's like 45-minute time limit, did you feel stressed out with like the time while you were teaching?
Not really with the high school classes, just because like typically there weren't very many people attending the high school classes. So I could, if not that many people are in there, then 45 minutes, I could pretty much address most of the things that I needed to with the 4 people that were in the room, and just being on the receiving end, like 45 minutes is kind of a long time to sit there and stare at a screen. You're, so I think it was, I don't know, maybe it's okay. Maybe 45 minutes is okay if I'm meeting every day. If this was like, if we were going to do school online for the entire year and we knew that that's the way it was going to be, maybe 45 minutes would be good to have every day, or maybe every other day. Maybe an hour every other day would be good to have. Like, I don't know what would be best. Having certain requirements for kids to accomplish certain things between classes would be good. I think that having the ability not to attend class and whenever you want, I think it's easy for the student to just like slack off and get lost and get left behind. I worry about that.
And do you miss like seeing your students in real life, or do you think like watching them online is fine?
I miss seeing the students in real life. Yeah, I like just hanging out with them and hearing their conversations about stuff. Like if it's online, it seems almost more purposeful. Like where if we're in person, you see kids joking around like, hey, what are you joking about? And it starts a conversation about something, and it can be productive even. So I just miss, I do miss that. And
I guess the liveliness of like in-class meetings.
Yeah.
And then like when you're teaching at home, like what's distracting to you? Like what are some like major things?
Being uncomfortable, like sitting, just having to sit there for so long. Like usually I'm walking around most of the day when I'm at school, and I don't notice any feeling of being uncomfortable. I'll be like, whoa, I just taught 3 classes in a row. I think I'm gonna go get a drink of water and sit down in the teacher's lounge and catch my breath, maybe grab a snack. But an hour sitting in a chair staring at a screen is 2-3 hours. That's tough. I get up and I'm like, man, my back really hurts, and so it's just, and you feel like I've spent all this time just sitting, and my body is like not being strong. I'm losing muscle mass, and I need to spend dedicated time to not do that, to not let that happen, to make sure that I stay healthy. So
do you like the introduction of your work in your house, or do you like to keep them separate? Or you're like neutral on the position?
I've worked from home a lot in the past. Like before I became a teacher, I did a lot of that. I work remotely, and it's And even working in school, like I often bring my work home, like always after dinner, clean up the kitchen, put the kids to bed, and then I start working, and
So you're
then
like kind of used to it
I'll
already.
wake up early in the morning, and
Okay.
so I'm used to working at home.
Oh,
It's
okay,
not a
good.
big deal. I've
Okay.
never really kept those things separate, which
Oh.
can be, my family doesn't really especially like that sometimes, but
Uh-huh.
it's just, I think it's just part of who I am.
Got it, got it. And then what are your overall thoughts, like moving into the next year, the pros and cons of, online school and then, normal school? Like what should we take away? What are some important things that we can take away from online learning that we could potentially apply to next year? And what are some of the things that, we should change to better accommodate our students next year?
I think that building relationships is really,
Relationship.
and
Okay.
not dismiss that. It's it's so important. And then making sure that there are many lines of communication
Mm-hmm.
open, and available. Like, don't just I don't know, don't limit it to email or when you're in
Yeah.
class. Make sure that that you're sending chats or something, through Teams, or find out what works best for the students, and even making sure and fostering the communication between students as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you try to make sure that the students are okay, and building those relationships between each other, among each other, as basis kids, we're, you're so focused on performing well academically,
Yeah.
that if that communication is not done through academics, sometimes students may be like, well, I don't have time for that. And the hallways are so social, and we have to keep in mind that that's not there anymore. So you won't step past or walk past someone and say, hey, how are you doing? You're not going to sit down at lunch together and just talk about what's going on. You won't have those opportunities. So I think as teachers, we need to make sure that we encourage those
Mm-hmm.
conversations between students, even if it's based on academics, because you can have conversations about the academics, but personal things will come into play, and those are important and those are healthy, and we need to kind of foster those interactions
Do you
in
think,
our teaching, and make
yeah,
sure that and realize that students are not just robots and they're not
yeah,
just
yeah,
machines.
yeah. Do you think that with Corona, do you think you're gonna form less relationships with students, or do you think that's not something that's gonna happen?
I think that personally, I'm going to make an effort to
Mm-hmm.
keep those up, and I've always felt things were important. Like I read an article this morning on this icing or ice phobic material
Mm-hmm.
that will inhibits ice formation. And this company, the startup, they just awarded like a $499,000 contract, or with this startup company. The Air Force awarded this, and we were talking, just thinking about like how innovative that is. And I know one of my students is very interested in material science. So I'm like, hey, I need to forward this to the student. So just, whenever I'm reading something and I know a student is interested in something, I'll often forward that, or like an opportunity for an internship, or anything like a competition or anything like that. If I love keeping students in mind for things like that, and just it's important for me to know what they're interested in, and I'm always trying to bring them out and saying, hey, what like in my engineering class, I try to, one of the first things that we do is like, hey, pick a topic, pick an area of engineering that you're interested in, and I want you to make a presentation on that, because we need to improve our communication skills and presenting and feeling confident talking in front of others and presenting information. But I also want to know what are you interested in,
Mm-hmm.
because I want to think about those things as far as designing projects. for the students to work on, or any opportunities, or if I, if I know somebody in the field, then maybe connect those people.
Yeah.
So,
So I guess your goal for next year is just to keep up the relationships between students as well as between you.
Yeah.
All right.